Israel has been at war now for 4 months against the Hamas terrorist group that controls Gaza and which started this war by massacring 1,200 Jews on October 7, plus kidnapping about 250. Now, with Israel controlling much of Gaza in this war, having killed or wounded maybe 20,000 Hamas terrorists, Hamas has offered a peace deal. Well, it's actually more of a victory deal for Hamas. Stage 1 of this 3-stage deal, and it will last, the first stage, 45 days, would have Hamas release just some of its Jewish hostages, just the women it hasn't yet killed, younger teenagers, the very old, sick. Israel, in exchange, is supposed to stop shooting, let everyone go back to their homes in Gaza, release a couple of thousand Palestinian prisoners, including about 500-600 serving life sentences or very long sentences for things like murder, terrorism, and open the crossings to Gaza, step up aid, help give, I mean, the full thing. And not surprisingly, Israel's Prime Minister isn't buying it.
I came here this evening to say we are on our way to that decisive victory. It is in our hands. It's not a matter of perhaps weeks, but it is in a matter of months. The IDF are working systematically, and they will achieve all the objectives of the war. They're going to release all the hostages, eliminate Hamas, and Gaza will no longer be a threat to Israel. I have decided that that is our objective. That is the decision I made at the beginning of this war, and we will not suffice with less.
Yeah, here's the frightening thing. President Joe Biden, right, Israel's supposed ally, sort of, talk about dottery. He called the Hamas deal over the top, although, to be fair, to scare you, he wasn't exactly sure who he was talking about.
And I don't want to, well, maybe choose my words. There's some movement. There's been a response from there's been a response from the opposition, but yes, I'm sorry, from Hamas, but it seems to be a little over the top.
Joining me is General Jack Keane. He's a retired 4-star general who served as the Vice Chief of Staff of the United States Army. He's now chairman of the Institute for the Study of War. General Jack Keane, always great to talk to you. Look, Benjamin Netanyahu has rejected this Hamas so-called peace deal and says it's actually after total victory. Is that the right call?
Yeah, very much so. I mean, the proposal at the end of it, what the Hamas really wants is for them to leave Gaza completely. And that's an unacceptable deal. Certainly, between what was proposed and the rejection, I suspect there is a deal to be made, but not on those conditions, Andrew. And I said that. The reason why Hamas has the hostages, at the end of the day, they will keep a certain amount of hostages to protect their leaders and to ask the IDF to withdraw from their territory, or they will not get those hostages back. It's not surprising they went for all of it at this time. But Netanyahu, that's impossible for him to accept a deal like that.
Meanwhile, in the US, your Congress has just voted against a bill that President Joe Biden wants that toughens controls over the Mexican border, with 2.5 million illegal immigrants have crossed in just 1 year. But that bill also, for some strange reason, includes money for Ukraine's war against the Russian invaders. I don't think it's strange to want to fund Ukraine, but why they have to be in the same bill seems to me crazy. So rejecting this seems to me to leave America weaker and Ukraine weaker as well. Why is there this stalemate?
Well, our border, as you described it, is hemorrhaging. As a matter of fact, since 1 October, they've had 1 million people crossed. Nothing like that in the history of the United States. No country can sustain something like that and still declare themselves a sovereign state. That is the problem that we have. But they could not agree on the border pieces of the bill. Republicans obviously wanted it to be stronger. Democrats thought they made a lot of concessions, but it did not pass for that reason. It had nothing to do with the funding of Ukraine, Taiwan, Israel. What will happen now is they're going to propose a funding of Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan only, and keep the border issue out of it, but permit amendments to be made. So that'll likely take place next week, and we'll see what the outcome of that is. Certainly, many of us who spend our days in national security and foreign policy want the funding of Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan.
But at least meanwhile, the European Union has finally agreed to guarantee Ukraine more than $80 billion Australian over 4 years to defend itself from Russia. Is that really going to be enough?
Well, it's not going to be enough, but I'll tell you what, it is, I applaud what has happened here. And the Europeans have truly stepped up. There's no doubt about it. It's the United States, while the United States obviously has provided the most money, as you and I have talked about for well over a year, they have provided their advanced weapons on an intermittent schedule. It's the Europeans that forced the Americans to put tanks in. It's the Europeans that forced the Americans to put long-range missiles in, like ATACMS and cruise missiles. And it's the Europeans that forced the Americans to commit to F-16s for the Ukrainians. So I take my hat off to them, and I've spent a lot of time educating Americans that the Europeans have truly stepped up here, and the United States has to continue to make this commitment. Look, if we don't fund Ukraine and we lose Ukraine, Russia wins, China wins, and we've just blown up Europe because Russia will not stop there. That's the reality of it. The Europeans know it. Most of us in the United States certainly recognize that. The majority of the American people for 2 years support funding of Ukraine.
But General, you know, when I'm totally on board with your arguments. I just think, particularly in our part of the world, you know, China is watching. It's seeing whether the West has got the resolve. There's theories in Russia and China that the West is weak and has not got any staying power. And if they can outlast them, they'll fall away. And then China's got its eyes on Taiwan. I've got all that. There are people saying, oh, no, this is foolish that we're getting sucked into a war to defend a corrupt country like Ukraine. It's not our war. Ukraine was aggressive and wanting to leave the Russian orbit and to go into NATO. What do you say to them?
Well, Ukraine's been an independent country since 1991. They've elected their leaders. They've got a right, the people of Ukraine, just like the people of Australia and America, you know, to determine their own fate. And we respect that right. And they were moving closer to being a part of the European Union and closer to being a part of NATO. And certainly that is what aggravated Putin. He wants to maintain control of that country. But he also wants back the European countries that are now a part of NATO that used to be a part of the Soviet Union. And he talks about it all the time. He's dead serious about it. So much so that the Germans got some classified information that leaked that indicated how strong their plans are to do just that. I mean, it's not just speculation. There are plans for the Russians to do that. So we have got to take this serious. We're talking about the future of Europe here. And can you imagine if Russia is able to take over Ukraine and then move on Europe, the incentive that's going to provide for President Xi in the Indo-Pacific region is extraordinary. You've got to see the relationship, China, Russia, and Iran. They are all working together. They resent the democratically led order that exists in the world and the United States as a superpower that helps to lead some of that. They want to turn that around. That's what they have in common. And we've got to see those relationships. In fact, we talk about it at briefings in the Pentagon that the idea that we could face more than one country at a time in a war is very real now, something we haven't really thought about since World War II.
General Jack Keane, always a great pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for your time.
Yeah, great talking to you, Andrew. Thank you.